Hey, welcome back to my channel. Oh my god. Something just went flying out of my nose. So if I'm super tired seeming in this video, it's because I am. By the time this video goes up, I'm gonna almost be 35 weeks and the exhaustion has officially set in. So if I seem like just, it's because I am. But I really wanted to get this video out for you guys because I think that it's going to be super informative, and it is a question that I get a lot as a surrogate. What surrogacy compensation is, what it's all about, how much do you get, like is it easy money, whatever. Like I'm not going to go too much into it, but the pregnancy is going great so far. I do want to do like another pregnancy update in probably like a week or two. I actually have a doctor's appointment today, which today I'm filming this on Tuesday and this will probably go up Thursday, so hopefully the appointment went well. But let's just jump right into the video. I have some notes as usual. Big note taker here. I want to start off by saying that surrogacy compensation is not easy money. A lot of people think that you kind of just get this like big chunk of money and it's really great and you can just do whatever you want with it. And to an extent, like that's like kind of true, but like not really, because it's definitely not easy. You don't just get the big chunk right off. You definitely can spend it however you want, but you don't just get like a big chunk of money. So I'm gonna like go into detail on some of the terms that I'm gonna be using. One of the terms I'm gonna say a lot is fees, and that I don't want it to sound like a charging fee. It's not a fee that you would pay, it's a fee that your intended parents would pay you as a surrogate. So if you're an intended parent, this is a fee that you would pay your surrogate, and if you're a surrogate, this is a fee that you would get. Another thing is like you have a compensation amount and then you have extra fees on top of the compensation that you get, if that makes sense, as a surrogate. I'm going to sort of be talking about this like as a surrogate. As an intended parent, it is a little bit different for you because if you're going with an agency, you have to pay the agency's fee, like on top of whatever the agency's fee is. You also have to pay the surrogate fee, the health insurance fee, you know, all these other things. And I'll link some really good kind of like informational things down below for you guys that'll pertain to intended parents and surrogates. So that's what a fee is. It's essentially, as a surrogate, money that you get on top of your compensation. And like when I'm saying compensation, I mean the big chunk of money that you get for being a surrogate is called compensation. So this compensation isn't taxed. Sometimes it is, depending on the agency. Definitely something you want to ask, because if it is taxed, you need to put aside, you know, a certain amount of money. Ask your agency if they issue I-099 forms. If they don't, then your surrogacy compensation is not taxed. If they do, your surrogacy compensation is taxed, and you need to make the proper arrangements for that. The reason why most agencies don't tax the surrogate compensation is because surrogates are less likely to go to that agency because it's taxed, and because it's considered pain and suffering, which I talked a little bit about in my last video. I'll link that up above. It's about the surrogacy contract, but normally it's the surrogacy compensation is not taxed because you as a surrogate are essentially giving up your life for at least a year, and you're kind of loaning your body to someone else, and it's compensated, and it falls under the bracket of pain and suffering. So that's just kind of the lingo that they use. You can do some more Googling to kind of like really get into that, but I'm not going to really like go too much into detail. I also do want to explain, before I kind of go more into detail about pricing and fees and all that and how much you get, why surrogacy, why if you want to be a surrogate, it shouldn't necessarily be about the money. Number one, it's not a guarantee that you'll even get the compensation. If you start out with the pregnancy and then lose it, you will not get your full compensation. You'll have to like either start over or, you know, end your surrogacy journey there. Usually with compensation, there's a certain amount of weeks that you have to make it to actually get your full compensation, and I'll explain that in a minute. So it's definitely not easy money. It's not something that you get right away. You have to wait for it. You have to work for it. You have to be pregnant for it. It's not an easy task. And some people think that people just are surrogates for the money and that they're not in it for anything else. Now, I don't think that you should go into surrogacy solely about the money. I think you should go into it wanting to help a family, but I also think that you should be compensated for your time because it's a really big deal and a lot goes into it. I'm not actually going to say how much I'm getting personally because that's my own personal thing, but I am being compensated, and I will sort of use like what my contract / matching terms kind of are, so you can get like a gist, but I will not be saying how much I'm actually getting and what I'm doing with the compensation money because it's something I feel that I need to share, but I am being compensated to carry this baby for these parents. So let's talk about the compensation of a first-time surrogate. So there is a difference. As a first-time surrogate, you can have between $25,000 to $35,000 to $50,000 in just surrogacy compensation. So that's just the quote chunk of money that you would get at the end of the pregnancy. The reason why that's such a range is because it really depends on the surrogate, the intended parents, the agency, if they're not using an agency. So going independently. Most of the time, first-time surrogates ask for between 25 and 35. That's usually like a general range, but some agencies will advertise that you can get 50 to 52,000. It really depends, but I do want to caution you that some of the agencies that say, oh, first-time surrogates can get 50,000, it can be harder to match or even find a match because then you need to find intended parents who essentially have a lot of money, and that can be difficult because a lot of people in IVF don't have a lot of money, but they really want to have a child. So something that surrogates will do is that they'll go independently, bring down their compensation to around 25-30, and that usually makes it easier for the intended parents to match with them. I also do want to note that the surrogacy compensation is negotiable. So as an intended parent, you can negotiate, you know, how much you're willing to spend, and the surrogate as well. You can negotiate what you feel is a fair price as a first-time surrogate with the intended parents or vice versa. So it is a negotiable number, and I definitely think that as a surrogate, you shouldn't shortchange yourself, but I also think that you shouldn't be like putting a ridiculous number out there if you're first time, because this is your first time, so you have no idea like how it's gonna go. Even if you're a second time surrogate, you still don't know, but you definitely have like more of a background in surrogacy. So there is kind of that. And as a second time surrogate, you get a lot more, obviously, because the risk goes up with multiple pregnancies, and you're considered, what's the term? Like you're considered kind of like mature, I guess. Like I'll put the term down here. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's a term that they consider you as a second or third or fourth or fifth time surrogate. As a second time surrogate, you could receive between 50 and 60,000, usually sometimes more, as a surrogacy chunk, if that makes sense. So the reason why I want to do just a little bit more detail on this, but the reason why that there's like a range of kind of numbers is because the agencies will set kind of the compensation number. The reason why I'm talking more about agency is because as a first-time surrogate, you really should go with an agency. As a second-time surrogate, because you've been through everything, it is a little bit more common for the second-time surrogate to go independently. So that means without an agency, and their compensation is usually slightly lower but the range is there because the agency kind of puts it up. Your agency will sort of direct you a little bit kind of as a surrogate in the line of compensation. And once you're trying to get matched with intended parents through your agency, sometimes the agency will come back and say, okay, the intended parents can't afford, you know, 30, would you do 27, would you do 25, or something like that. So it is sort of negotiable, like I said, but it's definitely something that you don't want to shortchange yourself. But as an intended parent, it's definitely something that will be there that you need to budget for. So I did mention in the beginning of this video that the compensation is not given to you in a chunk. So a lot of people think that it is given to you in a big chunk. No, that's not what happens. So you have to go through all of the process of the medications, the matching, medical screening, psych screening, all this other stuff. You have to go through all of that, and then you have to go through the transfer and make sure that the transfer sticks. And then, sorry, I'm having some intense rib pain right now. And once you're confirmed pregnancy, you still actually do not get your compensation. It's not until they have a heartbeat confirmation that that the escrow becomes active, so to speak, for you to receive your compensation. And once they actually confirm the heartbeat, at least in our situation, the next month, so like the first of the month after they received the confirmation of heartbeat, that's when you get your first check, so to speak. And this is done in it kind of ranges between agencies. It can either be like 9 installments, or sometimes it's 7 installments, sometimes it's 8 installments. But it's not just a big chunk. They give you installments each month that you essentially are still carrying the baby. So at the end of the pregnancy, that's when you receive the remainder of the big comp chunk, if that makes sense. So that being said, if you go to say about like 12 weeks and then you have a miscarriage, that compensation stops and you have to start over. But once you get another heartbeat confirmation, then your comp would start again. But it wouldn't be, you wouldn't get it like on top of, like it wouldn't be like an extra comp. How do I explain this? You wouldn't just like start over at 0. Like you would just start at however much you're still supposed to get of comp, if that makes sense. And I can't seem to describe it because my brain is pregnant and whatever. But I hope that you understand what I mean, because yeah. What you really should be doing as a surrogate is making sure that you get that comp every month, because sometimes the escrow account can get screwed up and you might not receive your comp. You should receive that in like the first of the month. If it says in your contract that you should receive it every, you know, first of the month after heartbeat confirmation, you need to make sure that it's in there. If it's not, then you need to contact your escrow account or your agency, somebody. Like, you need to make sure that this money is getting in there, because I've totally seen surrogates on social media, like they've waited months and they're like still haven't received one, you know, compensation check. And it's like, come on, like, you know, use your head. You need to receive your money. And the intended parents also filled that escrow account and should have filled it with a certain amount of money prior to the heartbeat confirmation. So that money should be going towards you. That being said, as an intended parent, you are asked by the agency most of the time to fill the escrow account to however much the comp is supposed to be, and then usually there's like a $10,000 to $15,000 extra chunk that you also put into the escrow account for miscellaneous things, or just things that might come up that could potentially be expensive, like medical issues or whatever. Because as an intended parent, you also have to pay for all their medical bills and anything kind of extra related to the pregnancy that's in your contract. So you need to have that money in there. You really need to do your research as well on your escrow company, because you need somebody who's trustworthy, because there's a lot of money changing hands. I will also link my escrow account company down below, because I'm super, super, super impressed by them. They've been awesome. My checks always come on time, no problem. I've even submitted certain reimbursements that I need through their kind of reimbursement page and never had any issues. I've even submitted things wrong and they've been like, oh, this isn't right. But they totally don't make me feel like I'm an idiot or like I'm trying to steal money or something. They're like, oh no, like we'll just fix it. They've totally been seamless, and that's, I think, why they're called Seam. Yeah, so sorry, I'm having like some more rib pain here. Ooh. Okay, so I just want to explain a little bit more about why you have to go to a certain amount of weeks in the pregnancy in order to receive the full amount of your compensation. This is just part of the surrogacy situation, essentially, is that depending on what your contract says and like what your terms were as intended parents and surrogate, you might have to make it to 28 weeks, you might have to make it to 30 weeks, you might have to make it to 35 weeks, whatever, to actually receive the full amount of comp. Usually with twins, it's a lot earlier that you have to make it to receive the full compensation. With a singleton, usually it's closer to like 28, 30 weeks. It really depends, and that's something that you and your lawyer and the intended parents and their lawyer will kind of talk about and see what you're comfortable with. Once you actually hit whatever those weeks are, say 30 weeks, once you actually hit 30 weeks as a surrogate, it doesn't matter what happens after that day that you hit 30 weeks. If you deliver the baby at 31 weeks, you will still get your full compensation after the birth. If you deliver at 40 weeks, you'll still get your compensation after the birth. And that, this is a little bit upsetting, but if that also pertains to if the child is alive or not. You're essentially paid to be pregnant for these people, if that makes sense. I want to talk about the extra fees that you get on top of your compensation. One of the first additional fees that you get is a monthly allowance, which I've explained in my previous video, but I'll explain it now again. So the monthly allowance is for birth control, prenatal vitamins, travel, notary fees, mailing fees, just kind of like little knickknacks that come up here and there that are like related to things that you have to do as a surrogate. This doesn't actually cover like a plane ticket type of travel. Like this would cover like your gas to go to your monitoring clinic. This wouldn't cover like your hotel fees when and if you have to, like when you had to go to transfer or something. It can range from $100 a month to $200 a month, $300 a month. That's another fee that you as a surrogate and an intended parent get to kind of negotiate about. So that's something that you get every month. And that's something that your escrow would automatically put into your account. So that's not really something that you have to like set up right away, but you do need to be aware of it. Another fee that you could get on top of your compensation is a start of medications fee. So that can range from $500 to $1,200. Really depends again, you know, what you feel is fair. And as an intended parent, what you can afford. Start of meds means that right when you start injecting yourself that day, you should also be submitting to your escrow that you're starting medications. You get a fee for that because that's another thing under the pain and suffering, so you should be compensated for that. Another thing is the mock cycle fee or drop cycle fee. So sometimes what surrogates do is they'll combine this fee with the invasive procedure fee. I didn't actually do that this time. I didn't really want to combine anything. I wanted everything to be separate. But a mock cycle is essentially a cycle that you do as a surrogate, and you take all the medications, but you don't actually have a transfer. The clinic is just seeing how your uterus responds to the medications. This is kind of an extra step, and a lot of surrogates really try to avoid this, but you're compensated for that. And a dropped cycle means that the clinic just kind of all of a sudden drops your cycle, and it could be for any reason. And so that's really inconvenient for everybody, including the intended parents and surrogate. So there's a fee for that if they drop it. This fee can range from $250 to, I think it can be like $1,000, but that's a little bit on the high range. Again, really depends. Another fee that you would get is the embryo transfer fee. So this is when you have your transfer, you would submit this fee. This fee is around $250 to $1,200. A lot of people, what they'll do, a lot of surrogates, what they'll do is that they'll have the transfer fee actually lower than the start of meds fee, or like the invasive procedure fee, because the transfer fee, like, the transfer is so simple that they almost don't really feel like they need a fee for it. So they might like lower their transfer fee but up their start of meds fee, because if you had to do more than one cycle, the start of meds, you know, can be kind of upsetting and painful if you're starting it for the second, third, fourth time. You might want that fee to be a little bit more, because you're going to be shooting yourself in the butt so many times that your butt's going to like really, really hurt, where the transfer isn't as, you know, invasive, so to speak. Invasive procedure fee, which I just mentioned, that can range between $200 to $1,000 really. $500 is usually a really good number for that one, and that includes like D&Cs, ectopic pregnancy, a CVS. Any procedure that's deemed invasive by your doctor, you should be compensated for that. And so like if you have 2 of those, like you would submit to your escrow account twice. So, you know, definitely keep that in mind. Something to think about. Fetal reduction, abortion, or termination fee. I think this fee is important, because if for some reason the intended parents want to abort, I'm not going to go too much into the abortion section of surrogacy, because it can be really upsetting for people, and there's a lot of controversy with it. But this fee can range to $500 to $1,000, and it's essentially there for, if for whatever reason, if it's medical or not, the intended parents can terminate the pregnancy at any time, and you would be compensated because, you know, you were loaning your body. The next fee is the C-section fee. So it can range from $1,000 to $5,000. Really depends. I think if you've had a C-section before, your C-section fee should be fairly high, because as having multiple C-sections, it can start getting dangerous after the 3rd, 4th, you know, 5th C-section. So that's something that you can negotiate about. I was pretty strict with my C-section fee. I've never had a C-section, so I really wanted that fee to be fairly high, because this isn't my child, and I felt that we really shouldn't have a C-section unless absolutely necessary. And then you also get a multiples fee. So this is, again, can range from like $3,000 to $5,000. It can even go a little bit higher if you've had twins before. And so this fee is a little bit different than the other ones. This one would start, it's paid as $1,000 per month as long as the surrogate remains pregnant with multiples, with the first payment at 16 weeks gestation, and monthly after. Any balance due after the birth will be paid within 7 days of the birth. Another fee is the monthly clothing, or the maternity clothing allowance. This can range from $100 to $500. What my agency did, which I thought was awesome, was that you just submitted to the escrow receipts that said how much you spent on maternity clothes, and then you were just reimbursed for what you spent up to $300 or $500, whatever your fee is. Usually you don't just like get a chunk of money for that. Like usually it's kind of more of, you have to submit receipts of like proof that you bought maternity clothes, if that makes sense. 2 other fees left that you would get on top of your comp. So this is a little bit of a more like, you don't want to utilize this fee. So this is if you lose an organ as a surrogate. So the organs that you could potentially lose is loss of fallopian tube in case of ectopic pregnancy. If surgery is required, this fee is an additional fee to the invasive procedure fee, if that makes sense. So that can range between $500 to $1,000. Really depends on what you want. Loss of each fallopian tube, uterus, or each ovary if not associated with an ectopic pregnancy or total hysterectomy. That's another fee. So that can range from $500 to like $1,500. loss of uterus, that's usually like 5,000 and above, sometimes 3 to 5,000, really depends, but I would go fairly, you know, steep with that. I mean, if you lose your uterus, like that can be very upsetting for some people. Some people it might not be, but it's definitely something you want to think about, because if you lose that and you were kind of hoping to maybe have another child or something like that, you want that fee to like really make you feel, okay, you know, I'm okay with this type thing. Total hysterectomy. So this is like a loss of absolutely everything in your feminine area. That can range between 5,000 to 10,000, and that can even go higher than 10. So mine's pretty high on that one, because I was like, yeah, I want to be rightfully compensated for that. So those are kind of fees that you don't necessarily want, but that should be in your contract. The other thing is breast milk and pumping. So right now mine is set up that I get $1 per ounce up, but with a max of $250 per week if I give them breast milk, which I know a lot of you already know this. I am planning to exclusively pump for them. So yeah, that's something that it can really range. Some people don't do it by ounce. Some people do it just by like a base fee. I kind of like the idea of an ounce. I think that then it just seems to like make a little bit more sense. So that's just something that we sort of did, and my agency kind of also put that in there. I didn't really do like too much tweaking with that. So that's pretty much it, like with the compensation. My camera just shut off, so I'm not really sure like where it ended, but I think that's pretty much it for compensation. I do really want to stress that it's not easy money. I definitely wouldn't be doing this for free, but you know, I'm happy that it's fair. I feel like it's fair. They're getting a child, you know, we're getting compensation. It's a fair, like, quote, business deal, if you really, you know, want to kind of break it down to what it is, because I am sort of like doing a service to them. I have a workable uterus. They don't have one, they need one, so they're paying for services. But that being said, I do feel that it's very important that you have a strong match with your intended parents and your surrogate, because if you don't, it doesn't matter how much money you're given, it can still be super bitter. And you don't want it to be bitter, because there's a baby involved and it should be positive and happy. But I don't want to ramble too long. I hope this video was super informative for you, and thank you so much for watching. And if you liked it, please give me a like, and don't forget to subscribe. And there's a little bell that you can click right next to the subscribe button, and that'll alert you to whenever I upload a new video, so definitely click on that. But thank you guys so much for watching.